there, you're welcome to BCC Podcast. CSEA is an independent, non-profit research organization that conducts evidence-based research for effective policymaking in Africa. My name is Ave Michael and I am your host. On this episode, Great Namani joins me to discuss Edtech in Africa. Hello, Mr. Great.
Hi, Ave.
So we're going to get straight into it. What exactly is Edtech?
All right. So Edtech, also known as Edtech or education technology, is simply the application of technology and information communication technology as well to learning, improving learning outcomes, and to teaching as well.
Interesting. What is the state of Edtech in Africa?
All right. So generally, I would say that in Africa, the state of Edtech is just close to average, right? Or just, for lack of words, average. Because generally, in Africa, I've noticed that almost all African countries, right, have a document on ICT, an ICT policy or ICT document, and usually the ICT document is more like the closest document to really understand what the intentions or priorities of the government are when it comes to education technology. So there is often a policy document that really elucidates the government intentions and plans, and then also, to judge the state of Edtech in Africa, I think it would be good to also look at the level of training that teachers receive. I mean, teachers are at the center of education generally. And in Africa as well, we've seen a couple of countries conduct ICT training for teachers. And how did I say that Edtech in Africa has been good, right, but in terms of the government's intention and priorities. But in Africa, the center has often been on private organizations, private edtech providers, because these are the people that secure the funding. The government has really done so much in terms of securing international organizations or donor funding. But then you see that the real solution, the edtech solution, the major edtech solutions we've had in Africa come from private investors and private edtech providers. So I would say it's been centered around the private edtech providers, although the government has done well in providing some ICT documents and working with donor organizations as well.
Okay, that's quite hopeful to hear. So we would want to know, how is Edtech aiding in eradicating the education challenge in Africa?
All right. So before I talk about how Edtech is eradicating the challenge, I think it would be nice to, talk about some of the challenges, education challenges Africa is currently facing. So Africa is really bedeviled by several challenges, education challenges per se. There is the learning poverty crisis, learning deprivation, having the highest number of out-of-school children in the region. Several other challenges. The fact that the people-to-teacher ratio being very high. When you go to some classrooms in Africa, you discover that a teacher has to handle like 40 to 50 students. These are really strong challenges that Africa is facing when it comes to education. Edtech is really offering a potential solution, right, that Africa can take advantage of. First of all, I would give an instance of what is currently happening in Edo State, the Edo Best program. So the Edo Best program was introduced by the Edo State government in April 2018. And what they did practically was to create a kind of structured learning, right? Something that provide teachers with tablets as well and provide a system in such a way that the digital tools can be used to monitor the teaching, the ability of teachers to teach, the attendance of teachers to classes, the learning of students and pupils as well. So far, about over 16,000 teachers have been trained and about 300,000 children have been able to learn using these edtech tools. So what Edo State did practically was they distributed tablets to teachers, and teachers use these tablets to teach more like a structured learning method, and teachers know what to do at every point of learning. And this digital tool has really helped Edo State because Edo State currently has one of the lowest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. So you can see that Edtech really offers a potential solution to the several challenges that Africa is currently facing.
Okay. I think it's interesting to hear the amount of work that is going on, especially in the states that you have mentioned in Edo State, knowing that there are people being trained and, of course, steps being made in the right direction to make sure that education technology is strengthened in Africa. So just moving forward, what factors support the adoption of Edtech in Africa?
Yeah, very good question, I must say. So there are several factors that we could point at, and I mean, the very first one would be to look at electricity, right? Electricity is a very key factor when it comes to education technology. I mean, technology cannot survive outside electricity. It thrives in the middle of strong electricity supply. And then you would agree with me that Africa has really been challenged by epileptic electricity supply, right? It's found across everywhere. I mean, just yesterday we got a news in Nigeria that the electricity, the national grid collapsed for the umpteenth time, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's something that we face often and on. And these factors are really things that, when taken care of, would help drive the Edtech adoption in Africa. Good electricity supply would go a long way in facilitating the adoption of education technology. And then a very other key factor we should look at is internet accessibility, right? For instance, in Nigeria, just about 57% internet accessibility. For instance, in Nigeria, internet accessibility is just about 57%. That means only 57% of Nigerians have access to internet. And you would agree with me that for EdTech to really be adopted strongly in Africa, there has to be strong internet accessibility. And for Nigeria, who happens to be, in quotes, the giant of Africa, to have just 57% of internet accessibility, it means that there is still so much to do in that area. And then there's also the network accessibility, the mobile phone usage, and then computer ownership, which is very, very important and key. And for instance, in Nigeria, Senegal, Kenya, and Benin, about 60% of people living in these countries don't have computers. So, I mean, there is no way EdTech would really thrive if we don't put these things in place. So these are more like the major factors that would really facilitate the adoption of EdTech.
Okay, so it's great to know the factors that would facilitate. Also, if you do not know the problem, you would not know what to solve. So now that we have spoken and touched on the factors that support, we would want to know what are the factors that limit. So let's get the other side of this coin so we can see if this is a way that this can be tackled. So what are the factors that limit adopting education technology individually?
Yeah, very, very good question, I must say. So a lot of factors, really, I must say. And I think the very, very, very key one to talk about is funding, right? EdTech requires so much funding because technology is something that requires so much money, so much resources, right? But Africa, I mean, we currently have several other challenges. There is a food insecurity challenge. There is the poverty challenge. So to even talk about EdTech at this point would sound like, I mean, being insensitive to the other challenges that the country is facing. So there is really the funding challenge. A lot of countries are going through a lot. I mean, there are several other issues to talk about. There's the climate change, the floods, and a couple of other challenges. So funding is a very key limitation to the adoption of education technology. And it actually spills over to the several other factors. It spills over to electricity. There is no expansion of electricity. Like I mentioned earlier, there is even this rural to urban divide. I mean, when you go to the rural areas, you would find out that there are people who have never seen lights all their lives. I mean, they don't even know what a bulb looks like. So not to even talk about electricity supply. They don't even have it at all. So this rural to urban divide is also a very key challenge, right, to adopting education technology. And it also still boils down to internet accessibility, mobile phone usage. So these are really the factors that, because they're not in place, there is no expansion of the internet, there is no accessible electricity. All these things join together to really limit EdTech adoption.
Okay, I'm about to ask a very interesting question. Would want to know, do you think political issues influence the adoption of education technology?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good to really talk about the place of politics in the adoption of EdTech technology, education technology in Africa. So the first thing to really mention at this point is the fact that we have a lot of transition of political power, right? That is a very key issue to really talk about when it comes to politics. So because every government and every administration would often have its own priorities, you would find a case where education technology policies are often ignored, right? Because of a change in political power, a transition of political power. So it has really been a key challenge. And just to mention, one of the key states in Nigeria that has really gone far in adopting education technology is currently faced by this transition in political power. I remember speaking to one of the education stakeholders in the States, and she was really scared about the change in political power because they've gone so far. So, and when there's a change in political power and the new administration doesn't carry on the beautiful education technology solution the former administration provided, you would discover that it should not just be a waste of resources, but it would even reflect on the learning outcomes and the learning it would reflect on the learning outcomes of the pupil. So that is a very key issue under politics. And then it would also be good to mention the issue of procurement issues. I mean, I remember that in Kenya adopted this one laptop per child policy where they gave a laptop to each child in Kenya. I mean, although the coverage wasn't 100%, but one major issue that I also faced was the issue of procurement. You would discover that these laptops were distributed to schools irrespective of security issues, irrespective of the ability of the teachers to use them. I mean, so they were just ignorant of so many things, and it's really led to the failure of the program. And in fact, it's one of the failed Edtech solutions in Africa, the one laptop per child policy. And because of the procurement issues, you would really also discover that in some regions there were even laptop thefts, right? You would discover that the people that the laptop were provided to ended up even stealing the laptop. So people had to move into the schools and steal the laptop. So, I mean, then come over to Nigeria, right, where you discover that in some cases the procurement process is often not transparent, and you discover that because someone is in charge of a particular project, the person would just decide to hand over the procurement to an in-law or a friend. So all these things really add to the political issues that affect the adoption of EdTech in Africa.
Oh, well, that's quite interesting to hear. I was excited when I heard the one laptop a child, but hearing the flip side of the outcome of that project is quite sad. From embezzlement to the theft, we really do have a long way to go. I think it's just right to ask what the role of stakeholders are in education technology in Nigeria, or in Africa rather.
All right. So stakeholders really have a lot to do. They've done so much so far, but I mean, there is need for improvement. And there are several stakeholders when it comes to EdTech in Africa. I mean, just even in the globe generally. So there's the role of government, there's the private sector actors, the parents, the pupil, the teachers, the donor agencies, and even mobile operators. All these add to the number of stakeholders that influence EdTech in Nigeria, Africa, and globally. So I think I would start off with the government. So it is not just the responsibility of the government to provide an ICT policy document or to ensure that education technology serves as one of their priorities. I think it is important to mention that the government has a very key role in implementing and ensuring sustainability of EdTech programs and interventions in Nigeria and Africa. So far, based on my observation and research, I've discovered that most of the EdTech interventions are actually from donor agencies and donor organizations. You find organizations like UNICEF, UNESCO, even the Tony Blair Institute that actually supported the EduCaid intervention in Sierra Leone. I mean, most interventions are often centered around donor agencies. They provide the funding, ensure the implementation and smooth running. So the place of government has not really been so strong as a stakeholder in the implementation of EdTech in Africa. Then secondly, in the case of private sector actors, I would also say that private sector actors have really been very strong drivers of EdTech in Africa. But the flip side would be that these guys are often driven by money, right? They want the funding. They've done so far because as at 2021, private sector actors raised about $20 million US, right, in terms of funding in the education technology. But I mean, when you compare it to the global funding raised in the EdTech sector, you see that it's about 18 billion. So $20 million US to 18 billion US. There's still so much to do. But I think the point to be that they are driven by money, right? They want to raise money. They want to ensure that they don't just solve a problem, but that there is something they gain in return. So, but they've done so much. And I think one other challenge it would be nice to really solve is the inequality, right? Because the private sector actors, their presence actually creates inequality because it is only to the, for those that can afford it. So when your solution is only to those that afford it, that means you're actually even creating another challenge when you're in the process of solving the education challenge. And then finally, there is the place of parents, right? Parents play a very key role, right, in being conscious of education technology, ensuring that they provide the tools that the pupils need. And then there's also the role of the pupils as well. That I think from my research, I discovered that actually pupils and students really love education technology tools. They are so curious about it. I mean, it's something that they're not used to in the classroom. So whenever they see it, they often embrace it, irrespective of the fact that they don't even know how to maximize its use. But then they have this passion, and that passion is really something that the other stakeholders need to drive Edtech in Africa.
Yes, I think just the introduction of Edtech will really elevate the learning experience in Africa. Mr. Great, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing from you and getting your opinion on education technology. On our website, we have a co-authored publication by Mr. Great and some of our researchers here at CSEA on Edtech landscape and challenges in sub-Saharan Africa. And in this, from Nigeria to Senegal and other notable African countries, the study examines the development and implementation of Edtech policies and programs in the region. You can visit our website or tap the link in our bio on our Instagram page at Cseaafrica to access that rich publication. Thank you, Mr. Great.
Thank you, Avi.
Good to have you. And thank you to all our listeners. Please do subscribe and put on your post notification so you can be the first to be notified when we upload a new episode. Thank you and have a lovely day.